When Ezekiel's wife, Sarah, who is Mbani's sister-in-law, comes to take care of Mbani and to give him medicine, then she tells Mbani that God will be good to you. When she makes this statement, Mbani rightly sees through her hypocrisy. And he knew she did not hold out much hope for him. So these instances and these inferences by Ezekiel and Sarah all show that inasmuch as they are professed Christians, there are elements of hypocrisy on their part, and Mbani keenly observes that. That could be the reason why Mbani stages a rebellion against Ezekiel's God towards the end of the story. It is also interesting to see where the title A Silent Song plays out, where the title comes in and becomes relevant. Amidst all these sufferings, that is, his self-incarceration at the streets, and again the confinement on his sickbed at his brother Ezekiel's hut, Mbani seems to be singing a silent song, a song only known to him. In most of our cultures, if someone is tired, bogged down by life, is moving to a point of desperation that borders on despondency, we always turn to songs. We sing songs to buoy our spirits. At the street, when Mbani feels that the pedestrians that pass by him, going about their various duties to earn some money, taunts him, we realize that he would still be happy. He is not even bitter to the horse and the pimps that are seen by others as people who are hated in the society. He tends not to hold onto that self-pity and bitterness, but in his heart, he is always singing a song. In page 18, despite his suffering, he has become used to an internal talk of bright weather, lovely morning, or beautiful sunsets. Amidst the challenges and the sufferings, he sees only the positive side of life. In page 19, when his brother Ezekiel gets to ask him if he believes in God, he's taken aback, and through flashback, he remembers what his mother used to say. His mother used to have an imagery comparing men to a stream. And the men could flow in one through the rocks of life, twisting and turning the pebbles. The men would get dirty in the earth. They cried in the falls and whirlpools of life, laughed and sang when the flow is smooth and undisturbed. And while some cried and wailed in the potholes of life's valley, others laughed triumph elsewhere. That is on page 19. And through the flashback, you know, something that parents inculcate. Parents are the first teachers to their children, by the way. So this idea that gets inculcated in Mbane's mind is kind of the ambivalence of life. The ambivalence of life in the sense that right now, even as we speak, there is someone somewhere who is passing through hard times. And they could be somewhere sobbing, they could be somewhere crying. But at the same time, there are people who are laughing, who are celebrating somewhere. That is just the ambivalence of life, which Mbane remembers her mother using the imagery of a stream to try to explain. This also leads Mbane to critically think about the God that Ezekiel, his brother, is preaching and wants to preach to him. He remembers, through the use of rhetorical questions, the hypocrisy that is found in Christianity and religion. He asks himself question, what type of God is this Ezekiel trying to tell me? God gives us everything, he had often heard. But did he? God is white cleanliness, eternal eye. But was that cleanliness? What did light mean to a blind man? Did not his life contain a darkness, a blackness no one would understand? Did the Christmas morning procession of good men and women in the city mean anything more to him than the generous in yesterday's mean men would be evoked, meaning more money for his heart, as they sang and whistled the carol and hallelujah down the morning street, as they got drunk and cursed at one another earlier than usual? He did not belong, and they had forgotten him. But had they ever remembered or ever actually noticed him? True, they would pray for him as a matter of course and drop him a coin. But instead of bringing the knowledge of Christ to him, much as he wished that he should be left alone, some good Christian men and women would once again curse him, call him able-bodied, only crippled more evenly day by the idleness of leisurely begging. So he tends to see a different picture through the hypocrisy of the Christians who he interacts with on the street where he begs. There is no clear-cut line between the Christians and non-Christians. And by the way, sometimes Mbane looks at what Christians does and what he does himself as a pagan. And he even he wonders why it would not be fulfilling to live a pagan life rather than the Christian life. Again, instead of the Christians coming to minister to him, they drop a coin there, and a whole lot of them, what they do is that they just curse him because he's someone who is able-bodied, he has his hands, and he has degenerated himself into a beggar. He has incapacitated himself on that. So the rhetorical questions that have been used there on page 19 tend to bring out the hypocrisy by the Christians. Fast forward, Mbane creates a niche of kind of a religion for himself. He gets to form some kind of hybrid belief, and he is convinced it was a glorious thing to believe, to claim, to a dream of a future life. He dreams of a future life quite removed from the Christianity that his brother Ezekiel is peddling to him. It was glorious, this feeling, that far, far away beyond the pangs of darkness lay light, bigger and more meaningful than that which his eyes were denying. There, someone would understand and raise the innocence of his crippled life along with the chosen. It gave him hope, and he sang his own happy song silently to himself secretly. The two forms of incarceration, that is, Mbane's dehumanizing suffering on the streets as a street child, barely 14, and again the sickness that ensures that death stares at him prematurely at this stage. Amidst all this, he survives with hope. He has a silent song of hope that one day, far, far away into the future, he is going to live among the chosen. His idea, his concept seems to be complex. It is not the Christianity that Ezekiel is trying to preach to him. He wishes that his soul were free, flowing everywhere and not incarcerated in a body which smells of sweat, unwashed except in rain, in which he could but feel. So, Mbane's hope tells us something, that inasmuch as life may incarcerate us, and by the way, we must always know that it is not to be confined in a cell or not being confined in a ward that can make someone to be incarcerated. You can be incarcerated in your own self. And Mbane, just like most of us should, is looking forward to a time that his soul is going to be free from all this suffering. And that is why the scene of his death, he dies smiling man. He dies because at the end of the day, he is hopeful that his life, upon reaching to its end, he has fought valorously and valiantly through his life. So that also adds something to us, that whatever confinements that we may even have as human beings in this world, however dehumanizing subjects like poverty, things like disease, and whatever challenge that we could be going through, hope is something that we need to cling onto, just the same way Mbane clings onto hope to emerge victorious at the end. As we come to the end, let me first go through some of the predominant aspects of style that we have in the story A Silent Song. There is the personification at the beginning of the text, and personification is majorly the disease Mbane is suffering from is personified to show how fatal it is, how dehumanizing it is. And this has been reinforced again on page 17, where the story begins through the vivid description. There is also the flashback and the imagery when Mbane remembers his mother and his mother's perception of life, to which he has adopted and come up with the hybrid way of living. Then there are the rhetorical questions that we talked about that expose the hypocrisy by Christians in this text, personified by Ezekiel and his wife Sarah. There is also the dialogue between Barney and Ezekiel, where we realize that Barney is logical, is kind of reasonable, and is not the naive street urchin that we meet earlier on in the text. Viewers, that brings us to the end of the analysis of this story, A Silent Song by Leonard Kibera.